Thank you for coming. And I've lived a marvelous life. In my lifetime, I designed over 1,100 buildings and over 500 of them being completed. I designed churches, office buildings, homes, and public venues. So today I'd like to start by going back in time. I was born on June 8, 1867 in Richland Center, Wisconsin. My parents were, and my birth name was Frank Lloyd Wright. And although sometimes I was born in 1869, but I let the masses figure out what's going on. My father was William Carey Wright, shown here. He was an itinerant musician, preacher, and artist who never held a job too long, what they call a ne'er-do-well. And that would have raised friction in my family years down the road. My mother, shown here, was Anna Lloyd Jones, a school teacher. Both my parents were strong-willed Unitarians, and I was their only child. As an infant, my mother decorated my nursery with engravings of great English cathedrals, as she knew one day I would help create them. As a toddler, she had me play with foible blocks, which are small geometric wooden shapes designed to influence me. Dr. Foible, by the way, invented kindergarten. My mother helped shape and influence me, but my father, who was a radical, opinionated Unitarian, gave me my fire. So much fire that he had was that our family motto was truth against the world, and he would have great philosophical discussions with other family members about this. Well, we moved to some small Midwestern cities when I was young, and finally settled in Madison, Wisconsin. And there in Madison, as a lad, I grew up on my uncle's farm, shown here in Spring Green, not too far from Madison. And there I fell in love with the simple landscape, the rolling gentle hills that were around, and I would later incorporate this love of nature into my designs. When I was a teenager, my parents separated and divorced. My father actually sued my mother for lack of physical attention, and I never forgave my father for this divorce, never speaking to him again, never going to his funeral years later. Then I took the middle name Lloyd from my mother's side. And when I was a teenager, I went to Madison High School. However, at age 15, I dropped out and became a special student at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. There I took a few courses in civil engineering. And this is the front facade of the University of Madison right there. You notice it's in the neoclassical or classical revival style that is imitating a Greek or Roman temple. Well, years went by, and what I did was I went to the university there, and then, I had a change of heart. I pawned some of my father's books and bought a one-way train ticket to Chicago, and there I worked with Joseph Lyman Silsby as a draftsman there. And under his direction, and with the help of a few uncles of mine in Spring Green, I designed my first building, which was Unity Chapel in Spring Green, Wisconsin. It was a simple affair, but I was only making $8.50 a week, so after about a year, I switched jobs and jumped ship and jumped to the firm of Adler and Sullivan. There I worked with the great Louis Sullivan, considered the father of modernism. Sullivan had designed some of these kind of buildings in the past: the Stock Exchange in Chicago, a bank building in the Midwest, and a department store in Chicago. You notice the use of arches when he built. So enamored with his work that I went to one of his work sites, and there I stole a piece of his terracotta, which is what this looked like. Now, Sullivan, a little bit later, had me work on the Auditorium Theater in Chicago, and I worked on the interior designs there. This is a place that had 3,500 lights and had a novel thing called air conditioning, which is forced air over large blocks of ice sent through vents. And the Auditorium Theater looked like this here. And what was going on at the time, in the 1880s, there was a building boom in Chicago, because in the early 1870s, the Chicago fire occurred, leveling all of downtown, and by the 1880s, more money was coming in, plus new architects were coming around with innovative ideas. Now, Sullivan's motto was, shown here, form follows function, was that the form of the building, or the shape of it, follows its function or its use. That is, a grain silo is in the shape that it is because its function is to store grain. A office building is in the shape that it is because its purpose is to house office workers. So Sullivan also helped design these new skyscrapers here, like the Guarantee Building in Buffalo and the Wainwright Building here in St. Louis, which I worked on. In order to achieve heights of 100 feet or more, or 10 stories, a steel outer skeletal frame had to be erected. This would help with the support of the building. If it wasn't for that steel framing carrying the weight, then the walls would have been 30 feet thick and made of brick and stone, much like the pyramids in Egypt, denying any interior space. Of course, later on, I would change Sullivan's motto, and that form and function are really one and the same. And of course, by the end of this lecture, you will agree with me. He also had me be supervisor of dozens of our draftsmen later on in life. However, problems would arise with my subordinates when I would tell them I was right and they weren't. Other problems would occur when I would tell them to be frank with me and to be insured with Lloyd's of London. And I would consider Sullivan to be my Liebermeister, my beloved master, and that he would be the only one that would influence me in life, in my work. And on the home front, when I was 20 as a draftsman, I went to Unitarian dance and met Catherine Tobin, who was 16. Well, we courted for 2 years, and we finally decided to get married. I was 22, she was 19. Well, my mother objected to the union and even fainted at our wedding ceremony. Such soap opera melodrama would follow me my entire life. And Kitty and I, we decided we wanted to raise a family. So we decided to move to Oak Park, Illinois, just west of Chicago. It was a peaceful, tranquil suburb. And we decided that we wanted to build a house, so I got a $5,000 loan from Mr. Sullivan and designed and then had built my own home, which is in the Georgian shingle style, but I called it Seaside Colonial. And I'll take you inside the house in a minute. Here I am in front of the house with some family members. You can see my wife Kitty, my mom, and some extended family members, aunts and uncles. And here I am again. And in this house we would raise 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls. Now, let me take you inside this house. In the living room, you can see, give a second here. You can see the windows were up high, shoulder level, with all around seating. Actually, I would experiment a lot with my home and try different ideas with it. I also designed this dining room, and you'll notice the windows are up high with recessed lighting with grill work and table and chairs that I designed, which became a room within a room. I also hid the radiators shown down here because I do not like ugly metal things in my house. And later on, I built a playroom for my kids. It was barrel vaulted, shown here with built-in cabinetry. Actually, I supported the arts and crafts movement at the around 1890s, 1900s. And back of this room was a stage with a piano tucked in for them to play. And then I designed a library, an octagonal one, windows up high, skylight here, built-in bookcases, along with an ingle nook where my family could keep warm during the winter months, with our motto, truth is life. And later on, I designed an entranceway, reception area that we'll talk about. Now, it became rather increasingly difficult to make ends meet, having a large family, and I had expensive tastes, also in my wardrobe and in those new battery-powered automobiles. Plus, whenever I had money, I liked to spend it. I often had like $1,000 grocery bill, which is $18,000 in today's money. So in order to make ends meet, I decided to accept some commissions on the hush-hush, on the QT, under an assumed name, and decided to build what I help build bootleg houses. These are houses on the side under the table, like about a block west from me, the Thomas Gale House, and next to that, the same kind of house. You'll notice it's in the Queen Anne style with a flourish turret and a flourishing gable. However, Sullivan found out about these bootleg houses and then fired me for breach of contract, though I would tell others later on that I quit. And in 1899, I opened up my studio, which is right next to my home, right here, and adjacent with it, and visitors would go in the front way in a rather confusing entrance, go to that reception area, and then go to my studio, where I would have draftsmen, a couple of craftsmen, and it was like a laboratory where I would help design the Prairie School of Architecture, the Prairie style. First, exemplified in the Winslow House in neighboring River Forest, not too far away. Strong geometric lines, large hip roof. The back of this house here is really the back right here. But I think it's best exemplified, the Prairie style, in the Hurtley House, 1 block south of my home and studio. And there I have a prominent chimney, a large hip roof, overhanging eaves, windows grouped together, strung together, strong horizontal lines making the building flat to the area, as well as an arch from Sullivan, and a rather confusing entrance. I always felt sorry for the mailman. And here's the inside of it here. And about 4 blocks south of me, the Frank Thomas House, same situation. The windows were grouped together in long rows, horizontal bands of wood, elongated bricks or stucco siding, and sometimes stone from the local area were used on the exterior. The muscular overhanging eaves ensured privacy but let in light. Plus, the house was set back on the property to further ensure privacy. Also, who needs a porch? No one waves carriages anymore for them. We don't have porches out here. The building should be faithful to the surroundings without classical ornamentation or fake surfaces. The house needs to fit the terrain and be rooted in its soil. Architecture should be a grace to the land, not a disgrace. Also in the Cheney House, as you can see with the lines that we've been talking about here, and I would become later intimately involved with this family. And the Dana Thomas House, same situation. You can see the strong horizontal lines, windows together, overhanging eaves, much like a fortress. And here's the inside of it, barrel-shaped, with much window light coming in. As well as the F.F. Tomic House in Riverside, neighboring Riverside, same situation. And here's a house, Mayor May House. Inside these prairie homes would be large fireplace for the families who congregate by, and I would often have built-in bookcases and seating because I abhor clutter, like right over here. And these built-ins gave the room more open space and helped soundproof them and make them distinctive to the house itself. I also designed lamps, tables, chairs, and art glass windows with strong geometric designs that fit into the house motif. The softened lighting was from skylights or was recessed behind molding or grillwork. I find bright lights to be garish and obnoxious. Also, the Isabel Roberts House in neighboring River Forest, she was my secretary, so I designed this house for her down here, and yes, it is a tree growing inside of it, and it's still there today. And as well as the Laura Gale House, 4 blocks south of me, and this is when I first started using balconies to convey a sense of indoor space and outdoor space at the same time. And the Avery Cooley House in Riverside, and this is the back of it. but the fun of it is here. And as you can see, it's a very Freudian experience coming into one of my homes. First of all, the entranceway is hidden, small, obscure, and hard to find. But once you get inside, you make a few twisting 90-degree turns, go up a flight of stairs, and with great presentation, see one great elongated space. And this would be like a womb of a woman and a womb of a mother. Inside would have a fireplace here and softened lighting like a baby might see through a mother's uterus. This really, since the reality of the building is not the container but the space within, I designed the interior to be this one continuous space. It was a flowing style of space where the elements of earth, that is wood floors, stone floors, wood in the ceilings, light from the windows and light from the fireplace all played together. So yes, I'm a renegade who had it made. I'm a rakish, rip-roaring, radical, revolutionary rogue, romantic rebel. And I rebelled against this. This is the 1893 Columbian Exposition in Chicago, commemorating 400 years of Columbus discovering America. It was built on Chicago's south side. Tens of thousands of people came to it. It was a city all in white. And what it was is imitating a lot of, like the Greek Parthenon and other temples and what I call tombs. And here's even imitating Greek and Roman goddesses and goddesses with statues. This place looked like someone poured thousands of gallons of white paint over a bunch of white elephants. And I also rebelled against this. This is the European and Victorian Gothic version of houses. This is the Baker House just south of and adjacent to the back of the village of Lake Deep. This is what they call a gingerbread Victorian or a carpenter Gothic. This house looks like it belongs in the Bavarian forest and not in the temperate savanna scrub that we live on. Why, one can just imagine Hansel and Gretel popping out of this house, and this place looks like somebody just ate a giant gingerbread cookie and got sick all over it. And imagine living up here on the second floor 100 years ago when there's no central air conditioning, and the real field temperature is 98 degrees. Sheer madness. As well as the Morris House in Leesburg, a few miles east of us. Imagine being cooped up in this multi-story, grim, fairy tale Gothic prison. Why, you can just imagine Rapunzel dropping her long hair from this top floor. What exactly do you do up there? So remember, 250 years ago, we rebelled against the European style of tyrannies and monarchies and oppression and decided to go our own way. Therefore, we need an architectural style that is bold, original, democratic, and simply states, this is us. Same is true with these buildings built in the 1880s, 1890s, 1900s, 1910s, 1920s. Why, these are old bank buildings, government office buildings, town halls, city halls, libraries, museums, courthouses. Why, walking up these stairs would be such a pompous event. Imagine going up these stairs. You can hear the music now. Bum, 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 bum. And once you get inside, marble would be belched up at you. However, welcome, in contrast, welcome to the universe that I made for my clients, which includes art, privacy, beauty, and an elegant, sophisticated, debonair, classy way of talking about great things. In 1903, I designed the administration building for the Larkin Soap Company in Buffalo, New York. This was a fireplace building made of brick that had open spaces, balconies, and steel office furniture I designed for the office workers. You can see I let in light from the top and have balconies here. I thought this would humanize the workplace experience. However, the critics didn't like it much, and later it was torn down. And in 1908, I designed Unity Temple in Oak Park, which is 5 blocks south of my home and studio. It cost $40,000 and made of poured concrete. And this was a church that had no religious trappings, no crosses, no steeples, none of that. And the front of it faces the great east-west commercial street in Oak Park known as Lake Street, which people promenaded down in their Sunday best. But the entrance is way out to the side. where it belongs. And this is a block that was broken up internally, making strong geometric patterns. And it was in building Unity Temple, designing it, I became not an architect of structure, but one of space. And I was greatly, here's by the way, the entrance over here off to the side. I was influenced a lot by the Cubist movement at the time, Mondrian, Brandt, Picasso, and a few others at the time. And the divine spirit that would inspire those who enter was around, and the all-around seating shown here was very democratically oriented. And as well as the light fixtures were akin to Japanese lanterns with exposed wiring. And this was against code, so told I wouldn't fold, not be sold, but was cold and bold and broke the mold. This is a place of spirit, peace, spirituality, and harmony, a temple to man. In 1908, I designed Roby House on the south side of Chicago in Hyde Park. It had long rows of windows, a central fireplace, interior open spaces, concealed entrance, large overhanging eaves, and a 3-car garage. The interior space had a unified wholeness to it because the rooms were not boxes within boxes. Sometimes screens would separate areas like in a Japanese house. My idea was to break the box from the rigid Victorian small square room mentality. You see, individual rooms segregate people and large spaces bring them together. And after 20 years of living in Oak Park with Kitty, I had a change of heart. In 1909, at age 42, I got involved with Mrs. Mamma Worthrick Cheney, the wife of a local client with Cheney House that we talked about, and she had 2 children with him. She was a mother with him. She was a feminist, was artistic, and not fond of a staid suburban life. Well, we fell in love, and since I only lived a mile from her house, you can imagine what my afternoons were like. She was a feminist, was artistic, and we banded our families, and like a river that doesn't know where it's going, I took a wrong turn, and I just kept going. Everybody has a hungry heart. This is a scandal that broke the rules of conservative convention and cost me dearly. My children were resentful for years after this, and I couldn't go back to Oak Park, or the place another famous Oak Parker, Ernest Hemingway, once said was a place of broad lawns and narrow minds like this here. So it was exile off Main Street. I left Katie with unpaid bills and young children, but I had to go into the unknown to test faith. And we stayed out there about 2 years, and when we came back, when Ma'am and I came back in 1911, I designed and had built Taliesin East in Spring Green, Wisconsin. Taliesin means shining brow in Welsh, and was built off a hill in the prairie style. It was a retreat from the world. This would be our home, a refuge away from malicious gossip and failed societal expectations. And of course, here's the inside of it, with built-in bookcases, wood floor, wood trim in the ceilings, windows together. Later on, we would have a fellowship there that we'll get to. And here's more of the inside of it. And you can see the windows together with recessed lighting. However, in 1914, while I was away in Chicago, a disgruntled domestic servant there went berserk and locked all the doors except one opening and poured gasoline around the perimeter of the house and set the house ablaze. He then used an axe to kill anyone coming out of the open area, here and there. And what happened was 7 people were murdered, including Mama and her children. When I received word of this in Chicago, I was devastated. Fire had destroyed my utopian dream. Everything that I had was gone. My love of my life, her children, even my art prints, my Japanese prints worth over $250,000. Everything was gone. So I had to start over again. And these are some of the women in my life that we'll be talking about. Kitty, my first wife, Mama, who in the fire, Miriam and Oklahoma. And after the Taliesin tragedy, I received a sympathy letter from a woman named Miriam Noel. She was a divorced mother of 3 children and was a sculptor and artist. And one thing led to another. We lived together for 2 years, and I took her to Tokyo, Japan, to work on a new project in 1916. You see, I got a major commission from the Emperor of Japan then to build the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo. It was to be 285 rooms and would ultimately cost $4 million and take me 6 years to build. It was a building to reflect both Japanese and Western tastes. I was greatly influenced by the Japanese culture with their homes, use of space, and simplistic beauty that would later incorporate this and would incorporate their ideas into my works as I went along. However, 1 year after it was completed in 1923, the Great Kyoto earthquake occurred, leveling most structures there except mine. I made this building so-called earthquake-proof by having the foundation float on concrete pilings. The building rocked with the quake, not against it, thereby minimizing damage. Structurally surviving this quake served as an urban legend to build my legacy on. And also, about this time, in the 20s, I was working on the textile blocks and designing buildings out west with a sort of a Mayan influence. In the 1920s, some ruins were found in Central America, Mayan ruins, as well as King Tut's tomb opening up in 1923. This led to an era of exotic mystique, and so I capitalized on that idea and used these particular blocks. These homes were a bit experimental, as the textile blocks would often break apart. This was done at the Arizona Biltmore Hotel, and here's on the inside of it, I would have these kind of blocks also. They were not very good structurally speaking to work with, but they were an idea that I did try. And in 1919, I designed Hollyhock House for Eileen Barnsdale. She loved a flower called hollyhock, so I made her a house with that flower motif in mind, like this area here, these areas here, and particularly this area here. And you'll notice in the Barnsdale house, it has a large central fireplace and even light fixtures that I designed. And I designed the interior house with tables, light fixtures, and accessories. So I got involved in everything. Here's some of the exterior outside of the Hollyhock house, and I designed tables and chairs with the Hollyhock house, with the hollyhock in mind. Often people ask me, were these chairs comfortable? Well, of course not. That's why they belong in museums. So, you see, I really don't like interior decorators. I call them interior detractors. And to prove my point, just enter a rooms to go store where all you see is ugly, crass, overstuffed, hippo-sized tables, sofas, and chairs. Elegance has been eradicated. Now, it was emotionally exhausting dealing with Mary. I married her in 1923 to rescue our relationship. Miriam was kind of the uptight type, so the doctors gave her morphine, which they would give to any woman in that time having any kind of problem. She became addicted to morphine, became a morphine addict, but she would go into heightened emotional ecstasy when I would whisper in her ear, "Why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near? Just like me, they long to be close to you." A year later, we separated, and in 1927, we got divorced. I guess my elevator music poetry didn't help much. So, my life, as they often would say, was revolved around controversy, scandal, ruin, almost ruin, near death, and malicious gossip, followed the next year by a glorious Wagnerian phoenix-like rise from the ashes to redemption. Yes, my life was like one overextended, long-running adjective, such as life on the edge of a knife. And in 1928, I was at a Russian ballet performance in Chicago, and there I met Olivana Hinzenberg. She was a mother, she was a married woman who was a mother, and had been a former dancer. So we talked about art, beauty, and all the things in life that I like. And I fell for her right there, and I told her right there and then, come take my hand and let's case the promised land. Told her we were going to take Thunder Road, and those 2 lanes would take us anywhere. Anywhere indeed, because I was arrested in Minnesota for violating the Mann Act, which is taking a young woman across state lines who wasn't my wife. Well, we were trying to escape from Miriam at the time, who was stalking us, and I spent 2 days in jail, and later on the charges were dropped. I guess the courtroom was adjourned, no verdict was returned. Now, Olivana would be my 3rd and final wife, and she was 26 and I was 61. So, but she was my constant companion, my fierce defender, my intellectual equal, my muse. She was a frozen fire, my one desire, and our love was a funeral pyre. So, at this time in my life, I was having a hard time making ends meet, by the way, in the 1930s. Things were a little bit difficult, so I had to buy and sell Japanese prints. Here's like a screen of Japanese screen that I put in the Hollyhock House. But I really had to resolve, depend on my Japanese prints, so I bought and sold these and traded them with my Japanese print table here. At this point in my life, I was becoming an old dinosaur, an old relic of the past who had some quaint ideas dozens of years back, but had fallen out of favor. And I was in danger of becoming a complete unknown, just like a Rolling Stone. So I really think I really needed to up my game here, design something of national interest that would pique a lot of people's interest. And I got my chance. In 1935, Edgar Kaufman, a wealthy department store owner, asked me to design a summer retreat for him on his rural 1,500-acre property in Bear Run, Pennsylvania. There he wished to have a house with a view of the waterfall on his property. Well, a home with a pretty view to me is distant, aloof, emotionally detached, and way too pedestrian for my style. So in just 3 hours, I drew up plans to have a house floating in space, suspended over a waterfall, and I would call that falling water. I wished for his family not just to see the waterfall, but to be an integral part of it, to be one with it. It is a 5,000 square foot house that cost $155,000 and is a prime example of organic architecture. That is to embrace designs shaped by nature in harmony with the surrounding landscape and to blend nature with habitation. And here's some of the trademarks that we've been talking about. Stone floor, massive fireplace, windows grouped together, a kind of a skylight or recessed lighting, built-in bookcases, and desks. Peacefulness, serenity with little ornamentation, massive fireplace, and built-in furniture with little internal hardware showing prevail. And as you can see, the interior of it here, and more of it with the built-in seating and bookcases. And this house emphasizes the vertical and the horizontal with water pushing under you. Of course, Falling Water was voted the best all-time work of American architecture and has proved it with 5 million spellbound paying visitors since its opening in 1964. And I even made special windows here that didn't have any of that garish, obnoxious metal hardware, so this didn't have any of it. And again, all the facts that we have seen about my houses. This work alone put me on the public map to kickstart me into my most prolific Renaissance golden senior year of design. And right now, I'm going to digress a minute and talk about names. Well, what's in a name? Well, we have Falling Water. We have Taliesin. I'm going to talk about wing spread in a little bit. I almost designed Fairlane for Henry Ford, but I was in Europe at the time. Thomas Edison had Glenmont. Teddy Roosevelt had Sagamore Hill. Even James Bond had Skyfall. These are all fantastic names that evoke a lot of passion. But what do we have out here? Why, last night, I spent time in the village of Bed Bath & Beyond Boring. And what do we have coming up? We're going to have the village of Chitty Chatty. We have Fenny, Marsh Bend, Monarch Grove, the Hog Eye Nature Trail, Nature Path. Pity the hayseed hick that thought of these humdrum Hooterville names. What's next? The village of Petticoat Junction? Names need to be honest to the people living there and to the place that they're in. Since we all buy homes here for cash, why not just call them Falling Cash? Oh, how about Cash and Carry? You see, names, everything with me is about passion. Passion is my fashion. And after all, what did we marry our spouses for? For the elements in life or the, well, maybe this and maybe that. Okay, now I'm depressed. In 1937, I designed Taliesin West in Scottsdale, Arizona, a suburb of Phoenix. This was our winter retreat. Old Levana and I decided to have a fellowship there, an architectural school. Actually, we would have two schools there. Two schools, one in Spring Green in the summer in Wisconsin, one in Arizona in the wintertime. And this was a place where students could come, live, and work with me, an intellectual commune. The school was built by hand in Phoenix by the students. They had to put in 4 hours of labor a day and then draft buildings. This is more than, here I am with my students. This is where I would come and work with them. And this is what they would put on their resume. Yes, I work with Wright. Yes, that's why you can hire me. Let loose like a deuce and imbued by my success, I was commissioned to build the Johnson Wax Administrative Building in Racine, Wisconsin between 1936 and 39. The outside was curved and sleek, plus inside I maximized space with very tall tree-like columns for internal support with rows of glass tubing at the top to create an open, forest-like workplace with natural light for the workers coming inside. At that time, the local inspectors, and I would call them imposters, didn't believe these unique columns could physically support the column weight and the roof weight. Well, I showed them as we tested 10 times the weight necessary on top of these columns to successfully prove my point. Don't play with me when it comes to weight. And in the late 30s, I developed wing spread for the Johnson people of Johnson Wax Company. And it would look like this in Racine, Wisconsin. It would look like this. And you can see the interior with a massive fireplace and open space. And then, starting after 1937, when I was 70 years old, at a point where most of us just play shuffleboard and bingo. I decided to design Usonian houses, named for the U.S. These homes were to be affordable, simple, stylish, smaller homes with moderate costs, but beautifully designed for the growing middle class. They were to be modern, upbeat versions for the masses of the prairie homes I designed earlier in life. They had a new approach to construction, like sandwich wood siding with plywood cores, no basements or attics. They had fireplaces, really small-scale bedrooms, very large open living spaces in the living room, and with slab-on-grade foundation. And people would often ask me, well, Mr. Wright, what am I supposed to do with all my stuff? Well, it's all provided. I have everything taken care of for you. I have you can see right here, I have the fireplace, the built-in bookcases, built-in lighting. You don't need all that junk in your trunk when you're with me. Here's James McBean house, Usonian style. And I designed about 60 of them, and later they would be the precursors of the ubiquitous ranch houses that you have all lived in, seen, or visited during the holidays with Uncle Bob and Aunt Jane. Homes the average Joe could relate to, afford, and raise a family in. This is inside. And nature does inspire us all, and did someone really design this house, or did I design it? You tell me. It has all my classic features to it. And owning 50 cars in my lifetime, I embraced technology early in life. I knew the automobile would play a big part in our society, which is why I put garages in the houses I designed, and would later on use ramps as a car would drive on to convey how people would move between interior spaces. I also knew that my use of cantilever roofs, projected balconies, gave the workers who built them and the people who lived in them some distrust with the always present gravity in mind. Plus, sometimes my roofs did leak, and the heating and air conditioning systems were at times faulty, the kitchens were small, and there were many caused overruns. This is because my ideas were ahead of the materials used at the time, such as the beast of burden called greatness. And today, I embrace the internet because each place I design has its own website with generous photos inside and outside of it. Hundreds of books have been written about me here, actually about 300, even ones I wrote here about myself and my style, and even my contemporaries. It's a big ticket item, and I even designed the furniture, place settings, and fixtures, rugs, and even evening gowns the hostess would wear in her ride home. And people would say to me, well, Mr. Wright, how do I clean these carpets? Well, you don't. They're just meant to photograph. Why would you need to clean them? And if it sells, it's art. And there's a lot of mass merchandising. Actually, 50 companies shown here mass merchandise my particular brand of ideas and designs. 50 companies totaling $100 million in sale every year. Well, you get all kinds of things to buy. You can get t-shirts, neckties, posters, keychains, coffee mugs, refrigerator magnets, decorative table lamps, and windows. Things like this you can buy for your home accent pieces. They look like this in my kind of designs. 50 companies do that. Plus, people come from all over the world to see my homes. This is in Rockford, Illinois, and this is a little rent house there. This is 100 miles west of Chicago, but it still gets 2,000 visitors a year. Even people from Australia come here, and it was a house designed for a person who had a handicap problems in a wheelchair. And people come to see also the Darwin Martin House in Buffalo, New York. You'll notice it's a classic prairie style design, and they get many visitors there a year. And also in Oak Park, tourism is a major situation. 100,000 people come to my home studio every year at $18 a head, plus merchandising in the bookstore. That's over $2 million per year. That helps support the staff, the research people come in to do work at the home studio, and of course photograph it. And they also, in Oak Park, I built a water fountain, and they have a bus commemorating me, and they also have a Wright Plus house walk. You can go into 10 of my structures inside and look at them once a year. Say I built over 25 structures in the Oak Park and neighboring river forest idea, so that's a big deal. And make no mistake, when you buy one of my homes, I'm in complete control even 60 years after I die. And that's because as soon as you open that front door, I control the heating, the lighting, where you put your books, where your guests sit, and when you look out the windows, yeah, you're going to see my art first and not the outside first. So, and if you dare to remodel, oh, are you going to pay the price? So don't sacrifice, think twice, and don't roll the dice. Because remodeling will make your home a Smith or a Jones home, and that really doesn't sell. That's pedestrian. But mine does sell, and for a better price. This is why this is up here, this photo. This is the Hills de Caro house, 4 blocks south of my home and studio. This house burned down in December of '75. And within 2 years, they built it according to my specifications and blueprints. That's not only the right thing to do, it's the right stuff. And here's part of my family. Now, what happened to them? John Wright became an architect. Lloyd Wright, an architect in Los Angeles. Catherine Wright Baxter, homemaker and mother of actress Ann Baxter. David Samuel Wright, building products representative. Francis Wright Carroll, an arts administrator. Robert Llewellyn Wright, an attorney. And this is Iovana. This is our daughter together. She became an artist. And actually, Iovana did have a child from another marriage, a previous marriage, when I met her. He later on married, he later on married Joseph Stalin's daughter. But of course, you guessed that didn't last very long. So, that's what happened here. And along the way, my son, John, invented Lincoln Logs, but sold the rights early and lost millions. A book was written about me called The Fountainhead, and became a movie in 1949. And the protagonist there was named a man representing me, a rogue architect named Howard Ward. Howard Ward, what a boring name. You think you could have something a little more spectacular like James Tiberius Kirk. Now that would have been a name. Okay, I also wrote many books. I wrote 20 books in my lifetime. I was a major art critic. I wrote many articles, was on the lecture circuit, was a popular lecturer, and I was interviewed many times on TV, since I thought TV would be the medium of the future. And I was right. And because you've been such a wonderful audience, and you laughed at all my jokes, and my love, you didn't need to coax, I thought I'd show you some of my iconic, irresistible, and just your whatever buildings. This is the interior space for the Rookery building in 1905 in Chicago. And I designed this space, and I designed this staircase here, shown here, which would become this place and the original Stairway to Heaven. And at Midway Gardens, I designed, this is when I was away from Chicago when the Taliesin fire occurred. And this was torn down later on. And the Price Tower in 1956 in Oklahoma. And the Arizona State Gamage Auditorium. You'll notice how very playful it is with these playful kind of lines and ramps, again, to convey people moving from one place to another. And this is a home I designed for my son, David, and sold just this summer for $3 million. And a Unitarian meeting house. You'll notice in a lot of my buildings that these situations come up. These are very big enveloping areas, much like it's a protective area, like this kind of situation, to protect people when they come in. And I also designed Philadelphia Synagogue in the late 50s, and the Florida Southern College, not too far from this, was a whole college campus that I designed, but they only built 12 buildings of it. Classic in my style of the Usonian type buildings I would design. And I also designed kitchens, not just living rooms, and this kind of kitchen, and these kind of kitchens. And is this one of my kitchens or an inspired one? You decide. And is this bathroom my kind of design or Wright inspired? I'll let you think about it. And at this point in my life, the buildings just shook out of my sleeves. And I also drew up plans for a mile-high skyscraper in the 1950s. It was to be 528 stories tall, with 18 million square feet of space, parking for 15,000 cars, with 150 helicopter ports, and 76 atomic-powered elevators. Sadly, I couldn't get the financial backing for this. The angels I so needed were confounded by the devils in details. And I also designed a gas station that was supposed to be in Buffalo, New York, but it was put in Minnesota. It was a whole idea I had for a futuristic city called Broad Acres. And there I would design like gas stations, college campuses in this community, and homes, and civic centers, etc., with my ideas in mind, but this did fall through. And one of my brilliant designs here was the Marin County Civic Center, done in the late 50s. And this place is in California, and it is so futuristic that the interior of it is still used today to film science fiction movies. I designed a Greek Orthodox church. This is very much like Unity Temple. Some of you can see all of you can see the designs here, like the all-around seating, balcony situation, and kind of a different kind of lighting situation with the roof. Build it, and they will buy and buy. And I famously did not belong to the American Institute of Architecture, the AIA, because the only thing wrong with architecture is architects. And that's when another one of Wright's trite sayings that you're probably saying. Well, this time I'm going to back it up. Currently, architects use CAD, computer-aided design. They sit in little cubicles, and design these homes. Why, there must be 60 or 70 different kinds of styles of homes they've built here in the villages alone. And their names are quite interesting, like Whispering Pines, Chattering Squirrels, Whispering Cul-de-sacs. But the computer doesn't know what kind of light that we need in our life. That is, we all love to have extra light, but the computer doesn't know that. So that's why we have to install solar tubes in our homes, because of this. So if you're gonna design something, then live in it and bring it next time. Don't just talk about it and sit there. In 1943, Solomon Guggenheim approached me to design an art museum for him adjacent to Central Park in New York. This would be a temple of spirit where both art and architecture would reign on Fifth Avenue. This would ultimately be a 16-year-long project as we dickered about costs. Originally it was to cost $750,000, but escalated to $2 million. Plus the zoning board had a difficult time with my idea of a vastly different nautilus-shaped building, which was in direct contrast to the surrounding, unimaginative, prosaic, tall, rectangular box buildings of Manhattan. This museum inside was to be one continuous spiraling ramp, a quarter-mile long, where one could view artworks as one progresses up my iconoclastic, innovative incline. 29 artists at the time protested my ideas to hang their artworks there, saying it would not display well. Well, since this museum gets 1 million visitors a year, I feel I got in the last word. And very timely aspect here, as well as you have my stamp of approval on this. At this point, I was worth $3 million, was internationally known. Students would come from all over to attend my schools. I was a household name, wrote at least 20 books and many articles, and very well known. However, in April of 1959, the three spirits admired most, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, all took the last train to the coast, and I died at age 91. So I reshaped America with a fresh, bold taste in architecture that embraced nature, harmony, simplicity, and unity. And what my life was all about was a lust for life. I wanted to take down life and just grab onto it and just take it and bite into it and get all the juice I could out of it. For me, everything was about beauty and passion. So if you get the chance, find romance, do the dance, take a stance, and be in a trance. Find your passion and make it happen. So when you go outside, look for all that beauty in nature and put it into your life, and always look for that silver lining in life. And thank you. That is the end of my presentation.